guys, Mark here, and welcome to another episode of Tech Rewind, the series where I test out some flagship phones from the recent past to see if they're worth using today and into the future. As I'm going to continue to do from now on, I picked a comment from the last video to determine what phone I'll be testing out next, and if you want your comment to be potentially featured in the next video, then drop one in the comment section down below at the end of this video to suggest what phone I should be reviewing next. In this episode, I'm going to be deep diving into a device that was dubbed the hero phone back in 2018. The OnePlus 6T. It's time for Tech Rewind. The OnePlus 6T was released in November of 2018, and a short month later, this version of the 6T came out, the Mclaren Edition. Now, don't worry, this review will apply to both versions of the phone, since the Mclaren Edition only came with some very minor upgrades, which we'll talk about a little bit later. When the 6T was released, it was instantly a hit with tech journalists everywhere, with Lynn from CNET dubbing it the hero phone without the sky-high price. And back in 2018, this was still OnePlus's game, to make phones that had all the speed of expensive flagships, and yet cost far less. A big part of what made the 6T special at the time was that it was released with a Snapdragon 845 and either 6 or 8 gigs of RAM. That was flagship tier specs, and this phone costs between $549 and $629 depending on the model you bought. But enough about the past. Tech Rewind is all about how much value these older phones can provide in the present. Here in 2021, the 6T is still a great phone, both inside and out. Around the front of the phone, the 6T still looks extremely modern, with slim bezels around the top and sides, and only a slightly larger chin. The teardrop notch for the front-facing camera is unobtrusive too, and this might be a bit of a hot take, but I actually kind of prefer the teardrop like this over the hole punch like a lot of the newer Android phones have these days. It even has an under-the-display fingerprint reader, which makes it feel a lot newer than 2.5 years old. It's not the fastest fingerprint reader in the world, but hey, I still appreciate that OnePlus stuck it in there. You know what else I'd appreciate? If you hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. I'm trying to hit that big 100K subscriber goal soon, so if you're enjoying this video and you want to do it, a sub to my channel would be very much appreciated. The flat 6.4-inch AMOLED display of the 6T is decent overall with good colors and contrast, although at this size I would have preferred a 1440p display for that extra bit of sharpness. The 6T only has a 1080p 60Hz screen. It's still plenty sharp for everyday use though, and most people will have absolutely no problem with it. As soon as you start watching a video or playing some music though, you'll notice one of the first things that OnePlus had to take away to build a phone this cheap, and that's a set of stereo speakers. There's still an earpiece speaker at the top for taking calls, but that speaker is not used at all for media. For that, all the audio is routed through this small bottom-firing one next to the USB-C port. It's actually not a bad speaker. It gets pretty loud and sounds pretty decent. In classic OnePlus fashion, the 6T also comes with a 3-way alert slider that lets you switch between ring, vibrate, and silent on the fly. This is one of those little things that makes me love OnePlus phones just that little bit more, and I really hope they continue doing this on every phone they make in the future. Really quickly, I just want to touch on the subtle differences between the 6T and the 6T Mclaren Edition, because you can find both of these phones on the used market for a decent price right now, but one of them provides significantly more value than the other. The 6T Mclaren Edition only has 3 main differences over the regular 6T. The styling or design of the back of the phone, 10 gigs of RAM as opposed to 6 or 8, and 30-watt fast charging over the 20-watt in the 6T. That's pretty much it. You do get a cool book with the Mclaren Edition and this aramid fiber case, but everything else is the same. Same display, same CPU, same cameras, same battery, and so on and so forth. The regular 6T can be found at a significantly cheaper price than the Mclaren Edition, and I recommend that you grab that one over the Mclaren Edition unless you're a collector or something. The 10 gigs of RAM is not going to make a noticeable difference in performance in real-world usage, and that 30-watt fast charging or the styling of the phone is certainly not worth the price increase in my opinion. Alright, now's a good time to talk about performance and software experience. In my testing, the 6T has performed flawlessly. Seriously, this phone feels every bit as fast as the phones that were released earlier this year, as long as you ignore the faster refresh rate of the newer phones. The Snapdragon 845 inside is still going strong, and I could easily use this phone as my main phone here in 2021 with absolutely no complaints with regards to performance. But that isn't to say that it's without its flaws. For one, OnePlus is extremely behind on its update schedule for the 6T. In fact, OnePlus lately seems to be pretty far behind updating a lot of its phones, not just the 6T. The 6T is still back on Android 10. They say it'll be updated to Android 11 later this year, but we're not exactly sure when. Now, Android 10 is fine, but I'd obviously prefer more timely updates to Oxygen OS, which is otherwise almost as good as the stock Android that comes preloaded on Pixel phones. It's super clean with little to no bloatware, and it has plenty of customization options built in, like the ability to change the theme and the main font of the phone, change the color and shape of icons, or use a completely different icon pack entirely from the Google Play Store, which is awesome. All right, it's camera time. On the back of the 6T, there are two cameras, one 16 megapixel wide and one 20 megapixel camera that's used as a depth sensor. If you give the cameras plenty of light, they'll perform admirably. Photos coming from these cameras are plenty sharp and they look great, especially outdoors, where the HDR capabilities of this camera system really shines. I find that they occasionally mess up some colors of objects though, like these roses. I assure you that these roses are bright red, not pink, which leads me to believe that the issues you're going to run into with this phone, camera-wise, is software-related, not hardware. The 16 megapixel front-facing camera is decent, but it has the same issue in low light and could do a little bit better with edge detection in portrait modes. I still think the images coming out of the camera are great for the price though, especially now that the 6T goes for much, much cheaper on the used market. Now, what about battery life? That tends to be an issue for older phones, especially used ones, but not so in this case. The OnePlus 6T came with a fairly large 3700 mAh battery, and honestly, this is an all-day phone for me, if not 1.5 or even 2. The battery life is just fantastic, to the point where it's better than a lot of the newly released phones that came out this year. This Mclaren Edition charges lightning quick too with that 30-watt warp charger that was included in the box. It'll still be plenty quick at 20 watts with the regular 6T too, but big battery plus fast charging is one of my favorite things about OnePlus phones, and the Mclaren Edition definitely does that better. Unfortunately, wired charging is all you get with the 6T. There's no wireless charging here, and that's another one of those caveats I mentioned earlier. The other thing that's missing here is any form of water resistance certification. I'm sure if you drop this thing in the sink for a quick second, it would probably be fine, but you shouldn't make a habit of that. But again, for the value that you get out of this phone, the omittance of those things are just fine in my opinion. You can pick up the OnePlus 6T on eBay right now for between $150 and $200 US, or this Mclaren Edition for around $350. Like I said, for the best bang for your buck, you're definitely going to want to go for the regular 6T, but at least the option is there if you really want the Mclaren Edition. At the end of every Tech Rewind episode, I give each phone a rating from A+ all the way at the top to F all the way at the bottom, and the OnePlus 6T with its great performance, crazy high value, and phenomenal battery life earns an A rating from me. It's an excellent phone here, even in 2021. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to support my channel, and as always, have a great day.